I think I'm pretty much following you across the globe.
My sloppy seconds.
Exactly.
I was like a hermit crab. I built the shell and you just kind of move into it.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Abroaders Travel Podcast, your weekly meetup with thousands of entrepreneurs, hustlers, creators, nomads, ninjas, wanderers, and world changers, all seeking to build the skills and connections to live a life without borders. If you want to learn more about what we do or download our entire podcast archive, check out the website, abroaders.com.
Happy Wednesday morning and welcome to another episode of the Abroaders Travel Podcast. I'm AJ Dunn here with Erik, and today we're going to talk about learning foreign language. Today's guest, Idahosa Ness, is at war with conventional wisdom on language learning. He's going to explain to you how you can forget the vocabulary, forget the grammar, and get far better results than ever before. We're also going to cover some big news with the new Chase Ultimate Rewards transfer partner. You can find today's show notes at abroaders.com/flow.
All right, folks, we got a ton of great content for you today. Idahosa is a close friend and one of the smartest guys I've ever met. His flow training took me from a babbling, confused idiot to having Brazilians actually think that I might be Brazilian. We're going to get to that interview in just a second, but before that, we got a couple of updates for you guys.
Some big sports news. Landon Donovan was cut from the USA World Cup team. He's the all-time leading scorer for the USA national team, and he's a three-time World Cup veteran. Paquette, what are your thoughts on that?
Man, lots of people saying this is a huge mistake. I mean, it's all over the internet that he got snubbed, and I got to trust the coach, man. He seems like a crafty fella. Maybe Donovan's got a shitty attitude. I don't know, but I got to trust the guy at the camp knew which guy to cut.
Yeah, man, I'm with you. Don't know either of the guys, but I've seen an interview with the coach and an interview with Donovan, and the coach, I like what he's about.
Still hard to throw away 57 goals all time for the U.S. national team. Hard to not cut the guy.
Yeah, just makes you believe that, it wasn't the popular decision, so we had to really believe it to kind of chap all the fans. Speaking of the World Cup, if you entered for the World Cup giveaway, we're still trying to find somebody. The original winner ends up not being able to make it, so just keep in mind that if you're committed to heading to Brazil and going to the World Cup, we got the ticket for you. So if you're still interested, just let us know.
Yep. If you can get to Natal, send us an email, support@abroaders.com. Drop in your planned itinerary. Just let us know that you've actually looked at a ticket that you're either willing to buy or you can redeem with miles. If you can show us you can get there, the ticket is all yours. First come, first serve. Definitely not going to go to waste. We got a couple of friends that are probably going to be in Brazil, might be able to make it to Natal. And even if we got to give this away to the coolest looking fan outside the stadium, somebody's going to be joining us. But I'd love it to be one of the listeners. So send us an email if you can get to Brazil and we'll get you that ticket. Next bit of news, I have received emails from a whole bunch of abroaders who got in on the mistake fare to Europe and Asia this fall. Yui was able to book New York to Milan, Prague to Bangkok. Danny booked JFK, Milan, Prague to Ho Chi Minh City, and Chiara booked New York City, Budapest, Bangkok. There was a bunch of other ones as well, so congrats to you guys that got in on that fare.
I'm pretty sure those fares were all under $200. That's big time. And if you don't know what Eric's talking about here, it's probably because you haven't followed at Abroader World on Twitter or signed up for the Abroaders community email list. This week we got word of a stupidly cheap mistake, and we sent out a quick blast to everyone in the newsletter, shouted it out on Twitter, and like Erik said, we had some folks take advantage of that one-way ticket with a stopover in Europe for under $200. That's just ridiculous.
Yeah, it doesn't happen very often, but this kind of stuff pops up every few months. Airlines make mistakes. Somebody forgets a comma. Yeah, I imagine somebody might have gotten fired for this one, but sign up for the Abroaders email list. That way, next time we get word of one of these opportunities, you'll find out in time to make the booking. Pretty sure that this is all closed up now. I think they've fixed the glitch, but we'll be ready for the next one as well. So join that email list and we'll get you the heads up next time there's a chance like that.
Yeah, and just to avoid any confusion too, right now we did toss something up on the website where we're doing free consultation to help people get an international flight for under $200. That has nothing to do with that little glitch. What we've got up on the website has to do with just the tried and true methods of travel hacking that we've learned and researched. Back to getting those folks flights for under $200. It's a very good feeling to know that half a dozen abroaders booked an international airfare for under $200 because of that email alert. It's always fun watching other people hack the system as well.
Stick to the man.
Yeah, exactly. Damn the man. We can get into that later with the interview with Idahosa and his stuff at the Duolingo. But moving on, we've got some big news out of the Chase Ultimate Rewards program. They've added Star Alliance member Singapore Airlines as a one-to-one transfer partner.
Yep. As you probably know, United is also a Chase transfer partner, and they too are in Star Alliance. So we're going to run through a quick head-to-head comparison to highlight why Singapore is a key addition to the Chase transfer partners. First of all, for premium cabin bookings, United is like most other domestic U.S. airlines. They're far behind the rest of the world in the quality of first and business class products. So if you want to fly first or business, and especially first class, you want to be on an airplane with Singapore painted on the tail. And it's like comparing one of those delicious steaks you're going to be sampling in Buenos Aires in the next couple of weeks to, your frozen hamburger. It just doesn't compare. Singapore is a phenomenal airline. And the problem is that they don't release their first class award space to their Star Alliance partners. They keep it all for their own Chris Flyer members, which is their rewards program name. So if you have United points, you can't book into Singapore first class. If you transfer those Chase points to Singapore, you can.
Yeah, just like Erik said, even though they are a Star Alliance member, they just don't make any of their space available for United. So here's a couple examples of what Erik's talking about. Singapore Airlines A380 suite class from San Francisco to Hong Kong to Singapore. That's 70,000 miles one way.
And that's basically a hotel room at 40,000 feet. You got a double bed, and they're releasing 2 tickets so you can book with your significant other and have a pretty awesome flying experience. Also got fares from Houston to Moscow and JFK to Frankfurt, Germany. Both of those are 57,000 points one way in first class.
Have you priced any of those out? I didn't get around to pricing them out. Do you know how much that would cost as they sell, for like a revenue ticket? I mean, thousands of dollars.
Thousands of dollars for sure. I don't know exactly what it would be, but it's a lot.
Yeah, so, it can also save you miles if you use Singapore miles to book on a United flight from the continental U.S. to Hawaii, for example. We'll link up to a post that covers some of these examples in the show notes. And if you do happen to have Chase points and are considering a specific redemption, shoot us an email to support@abroaders.com before you make that transfer, and we'll make sure that you're not missing a better opportunity.
Great. Okay, so a couple of final notes about Singapore. They do allow one-way bookings at half the price of round trips. They have no close-in booking fees, so if it's under 21 days, you're not going to pay that $75 fee like you would with United. And they also have much lower change fees than United. If your flight doesn't work out with Singapore, you're only going to have to pay $30 to redeposit the miles and just start over. United charges $200 for that. Lastly, Singapore has 6 non-Star Alliance partners, so that gives you a lot of different options that you wouldn't have transferring your Chase points to United.
Yeah, with Singapore, fuel surcharges are an issue. So you avoid them on U.S. routes like Hawaii, for example, and anything to South America. Now, even if there are fuel surcharges, it can still make a lot of sense to pay a few $100 to go into suite class, considering how much that would actually cost and the actual experience you're getting. Another thing to know is this is not an instant transfer. It may be at some point in the future, but right now it looks like about 48 hours is the normal transfer time.
Yeah, and if you guys do make a transfer to Singapore from Chase, drop a comment on the show notes page. Again, that's abroaders.com/flow. Let us know how long it took for that transfer to post. That should help the other Abroaders members out. I think it's time to get into the interview. Let's get inspired.
Yeah, man.
We have Idahosa Ness from Mimic Method today. Idahosa, thanks for joining us, man. How you doing?
Doing great, man. Thanks for having me on the show.
So where are you right now?
Right now, I am in Lisbon, in Portugal.
Awesome. How's it been?
Oh, it's great, man. Beautiful weather. First time in that kind of Mediterranean climate is really nice, walkable, pretty city. Honestly, I've been on the grind for the past 2 weeks since I've been here. I actually just came here for a very stable environment for me to work on my Kickstarter and other project. I haven't done much in terms of sightseeing or partying or anything, but just the general day-to-day life is pretty nice.
That's sweet, man. All right, so as Erik said, you're from the mimicmethod.com. For those that haven't heard of it, if you don't mind, can you give kind of the genesis story?
Yeah, sure. Well, the problem we are addressing at Mimic Method is the biggest problem people have when learning a language, which is they don't know how to process the sounds. So they don't know how to hear the sounds of the foreign language, how to create them with your mouth. As a result, people have these, thick accents, which kind of impede their process to becoming fluent in a language. So that's what we do, and we do that with a musical speech therapy technique I created called flow training. And actually, Erik was one of the first guys there when I first came up with the idea and tried it on, and he can attest to it. But it's basically what we do in our current offerings is we take song lyrics from the language, whatever your target language is. We break it down syllable by syllable, phoneme by phoneme, give it to you in as much detail as possible. Slow it down. You learn it bit by bit. And the idea is when you learn these songs, every time you sing them, you're actively building the motor memory you need to produce them. You're training your ear so you can hear it. And even though you don't learn like vocabulary or grammar or anything, when you go out there and you're in the street talking to Brazilians or talking to Chinese people or whatever, you can mimic them. And once you can mimic them, the actual process of learning the language is infinitely faster and cleaner.
We were in Rio, we were walking to Paquilarge, and there was a song from Cartola that you gave me the first line, and I couldn't spit it out at all. It came out just horrendous. And then you had me doing this da-dee-dee, da-dee-da-dee-da. And I'm just feeling like an idiot. We walked for like 15 minutes, and we never got back to the words. You just kept doing that over and over. And so I trained that for like 10 minutes in Idahosa, and I get to this park, and then you said the line again, and you're like, all right, now try and repeat it. And it just came right off my tongue, man.
Yeah, it's all based on my experiences growing up playing musical instruments. I trained violin and whatnot. And actually the whole da-di-da thing, the genesis of that is I have a very clear memory of when I was like maybe 14 or something with my violin teacher learning some very complex like Mozart cadenza. I kept practicing all week and I couldn't get it. And then I came into the lesson and then my teacher was like, all right, put the violin down and just clap it. I'm like, what? And she's like, clap it out. So I clapped out the rhythm because there's always complex rhythms in it. I clapped it out a bunch of times until I got the rhythm, picked the violin up. On my first try after struggling an entire week, I get it perfectly. So what I learned from that is that rhythm is the basis for everything. So then later on, several years later in my life, while doing other stuff, I realized rhythm is also the basis for language. So the whole da-di-da thing is a way for people to train the rhythm of a language without worrying about all the more like complex things of the pronunciation. Because anybody can say da-di-da, right? So once you learn da-di-da for the Cartola song, everything else kind of fell into place.
It was a night and day difference, man. I remember just like that was when I really started paying attention. I was like, holy shit. And the fact, that at that point, every other Brazilian we were talking to was like, this guy's not American. He's from Brazil, right? He lived here his whole life, didn't he? So, all right. Well, I want to get into the Duolingo project in a second here, but you said you're kind of buckled down working on getting work done there in Lisbon. That's something that we, try and focus on a lot. A lot of our listeners are working on businesses. Do you have any tips or any strategies that you can share for getting settled quickly when you really got to get stuff done and you're in a place you've never been? I can see you got a pretty nice office going there.
Oh yeah, man. I've been doing this so long now. Every time I get more and more tricks for networking, establishing myself in places. Right now I'm at the Regis office, which there's a hack for that. You can probably post it on the post. There's a hack for getting free global Regis membership. For those who don't know, Regis is like a business lounge. You get, high speed internet. The secretary brings me coffee and like some bottled water and like a little biscuit. And it's just nice and like, it's good when you travel. I hate working out of cafes. I can work out of my own apartment in the morning, but after lunchtime, if there's a bed anywhere near me, I'm just lights out, so that's why I need to go to offices. I looked that up, set it up as Regis in every major city. Beyond that, housing depends on the city. If some cities is easy, Airbnb sometimes is more expensive. In this case, I kind of used Airbnb to find it, but then I went there and negotiated the price myself. Also, one thing I've really been getting into is networking, pre-networking for a place. And what I highly recommend for that is Facebook graph search. And the way that works is you say, I'm going to Berlin next month, for example. So what I'm going to do before I go to Berlin is go to Facebook graph search and say, friends who live in Berlin, just to see if anyone's in my Facebook network who's actually there right now, and contact them. Then if there's no one in Berlin that I know directly, I go on to the second degree connection and I say friends of friends in Berlin. And then Facebook shows me all the people who are friends of friends. So I go through that list and I see who like the mutual friend is. And if it's a mutual friend who I'm actually I actually know pretty well, I kind of send that person a message like, hey, I'm going to contact your friend to link up with them and include you in the message. Is that okay? So then I contact these people I don't know at all, but we have that one mutual connection. I'm like, hey, look, I'm a friend of Erik. I'm going to be in Berlin next month and I'm looking for people to hang out with. This is what I do. This is why you should take time out of your day to get to know me, and then boom, by the time I touch down on the plane, I already have like a network going on. And that's huge because if you travel solo, and you're by yourself, you can get super lonely and like depressed if you don't have ways to really actively connect with people,
Yeah, it's easy. It's easy to get completely lost. Okay, Idahosa, so you're the hustler man, always traveling around. I know that you were big into leveraging tools. I mean, what we're recording on right now is a web app I've never even heard of. Like, what's in your digital toolbox right now? What software are you leveraging that you think other people may not have heard of?
If anyone's ever heard of the Pomodoro Technique, it's a productivity technique where you divide your work into 25-minute work sessions. And it has a lot of benefits in that if you're going to do like a long work session, you're better, if you're going to work like 6 hours, for example, you're better breaking that up into 25-minute sessions and 5-minute breaks than to do 6 hours straight because you burn yourself out. Also, it's a good way to kind of keep an honest assessment of what your productivity is, because now I don't say I worked 2 hours, I worked 4 Pomodoros. And the rule for a Pomodoro is that you can't take any interruptions. You have to state your task ahead of time and focus just on that task. Anyways, you can look it up, all that. What I created recently is a little private group where we synchronize Pomodoros using a app called TomatoWhist. I'll give you a link for that. And it's just like a synchronized timer. You can just give people the link and you're on the same time.
Yeah, we actually mentioned this in a couple episodes back. That is a phenomenal tool, man. I think the thing, man, is that when you have to state to somebody else what your objective's going to be, you truly have to think it through a lot more. I find myself, getting up and I'm like, oh, okay, I'll just look at some email. I'll find some shit to do. I'll just start slowly getting pulled into a progression of work that's not always the most valuable thing I could be doing. And when you start out with, okay, I've got 2 25-minute sessions to get something that's going to be critical to my business done today, it's a really good hack, man. I definitely think you got something live with that one.
Oh, yeah, definitely. There's a lot of people on there who are like, oh, man, this is great, and who use it religiously every day. Combines like social accountability, the structuring. There's also a networking element where there's people who, our friend Danny McLewis, for example, we live together in Colombia. And normally if I leave a place, it's kind of hard to keep in contact with somebody. Now through this thing, we're interacting every day and I'm keeping up with his own projects, but in a productive way because we're checking in during our 5-minute breaks like, hey man, what's up? So yeah, that's definitely going to be another app in the future once I get my head above water with this Kickstarter.
Cool. All right. Well, so you recently launched a new Kickstarter campaign. It's sort of an add-on to what you've been doing with Mimic Method. Tell us about the project.
Sure. The main element of the project is that I started Mimic Method, really kind of the same way I kind of hacked together this productivity thing with different apps. Mimic Method is the same way I kind of hacked together SoundCloud with different audio things, and it works all very well, but I wanted to create an integrated experience that you can use on your phone, use on your computer, and just upgrade the whole thing. And also in the process, I wanted to create content for people to learn what stuff means in a language, because currently all we do is we teach you how stuff sounds. So thinking of ways to do that, I saw Duolingo, which is my favorite program for learning because it's very straightforward, simple, gamified, addictive, proven effective, yada, yada. And it's a great app, but once again, it doesn't teach you flow. It doesn't teach you the pronunciation. So I think, oh, wow, well, what we can do is create content for this app I'm developing that is centered around Duolingo phrases. So somebody can take Duolingo and learn like what something means in Portuguese, for example, and go through their process. But then when they're done, if they want to master their pronunciation of those same phrases, they come to our app. So that was the original idea for the Kickstarter. But then if you go to the page, you'll see the kind of story. Things kind of unfolded a little bit differently. I was asked by Duolingo to refrain from using their sentences and all their name and stuff, which kind of really messed up my project. So as a kind of workaround, I didn't sleep for 48 hours and I was just like crazy, coming up with crazy ideas. And it was like, I already had the press lined up and I had to launch that day. I had like 24 hours to figure this out. So I came up with this crazy thing with like, it's called Squawk. And basically I just kind of made like a kind of parody of their logo. Went back, I had to learn like Adobe After Effects in one night because my video guy was not available. So I spent like 8 hours trying to figure that shit out. I downloaded it and I opened it up and it just like all kinds of crazy ass. I think I was like, oh my God. And then just Googling all night and trying to figure out how I can switch out all the logos. Finally figured it out. It was the most stressful period of my entire life. Basically, I made the video. I replaced all the Duolingo symbols with this little kind of Afro Birdman, and I called it Squawk instead of Duolingo. It's pretty absurd. It evolved into this whole concept of like squawking a project so you can achieve the same end goal while avoiding getting your ass sued. That's what squawking now means. It's a neologism I just coined. So basically, the project's the same thing. We're still making an experience that will enhance the Duolingo experience. It's just that we're not using the same phrases. We're using squawked version of Duolingo phrases. So if Duolingo has ¿Dónde está la biblioteca?, we're going to teach you how to pronounce ¿Dónde está la discoteca?, which is like different. It's a different phrase, but it's the same pronunciation, right? More or less. So you can read all about it on the Kickstarter page.
Very cool, man. It's a huge shame, and copyright laws is intended to promote intellectual creativity, and so it's a huge bummer to when you get a company that sicks their lawyers on you when you're trying to create something to help achieve the same end goal as they're looking for.
In their defense, they were friendly about it. They just sent an email, because I reached out to them. They sent an email like, yeah, we appreciate your efforts, but you can't use our stuff. And like, also, I understand like branding wise, you have to protect the trademark. People could get confused by seeing stuff. Actually, the workaround we came up with, I think, is actually going to work better than if we did the original plan, just because now people have more phrases and context to work with. We'll see how it goes. Hopefully, I'll raise enough money to bail myself out of prison when things get real. so we'll see how it goes.
So is this starting out just as an app for iPhones? Is that basically where you're starting with?
Actually,
web app?
When you see the images on the website, it's primarily a phone thing because I envisioned it as a phone thing. But the first iteration is going to be a simple web app because web app is universal. I want everyone to have access to it. We're going to do all the main languages, which is Spanish, French, English, German, Portuguese, Italian, Chinese, Japanese, and I'm going to add Korean to it. And we're just going to do like a core 200 phrases for each of those languages on the web app. Once that's been tested and created, next phase is to finish coding up the iPhone app, beta test that, release that on the market. Once we master that experience of the mobile interaction, then we'll move into Android development.
Sweet, man. Let's get back to Mimic Method a little bit, too. We just kind of touched on that. So 2 questions for you. Number 1, who is the Mimic Method for? And are there any people that you think should just stay away? It's not worth their time. Also, what's the level of commitment somebody needs to give? What does it look like for somebody that uses your service, for the Mimic Method, that is?
Sure. So it's really for anybody who is interested in being conversational and fluent in a foreign language. So if your only goal was to just learn how to read and write and read novels, I guess, in your target language, then it's probably not the best program for you. But I'm assuming most people who take the time to learn a language, they're doing it because they want to connect with people.
Ah, man, I just want to know grammar.
I just want to know grammar for the sake of knowing grammar.
I bet you there's some language freaks that want to read like romance novels in French because the French are just way better than the languages.
I've seen websites where it's like for French and it's like tagline is like learn the language of Proust. I'm like, really? Like that's why you learn French, so you can like read Proust? I personally learned French so I can like hang out with people in Montreal and like France and Cameroon and stuff, So I personally learned language for travel. So that's really what I'm gearing towards people is people who are interested in the culture and want to connect with people in different places. Erik, to tell you from his experience as well, that when you really speak with a good accent and you're, not only does it make you better at grammar and everything else, but it also makes people react to you differently. Like when you speak with a really good accent, when you speak with a bad accent, people have trouble listening to you. It's like kind of a pain. You think about like if you're in a college course with like some guy from Asia who was like thick accent, like the guy could be a super smart guy and know his stuff, but if his accent is super thick, you're like, man, this is just too annoying to listen to. It takes energy. It takes energy. On the other end, if you can sound just like a Brazilian or sound just like a Chinese person, people appreciate the shit out of you. Like they're like, wow, you really understand my culture. And that's why we put the music in there too. Not only is it practical for the learning process, but it ties into the whole philosophy, which is a connection. And if you think about it, the only other cultural element that's been universal since time eternal for humanity, besides language, is music. Anywhere you go, people are dancing and singing, right? So that's what we really want to move towards in the future, is creating more music content for people to approach the culture that they're interested through the musical culture.
Yeah. I think it's also, people maybe assume because, at least my experience with the Mimic Method is because you're directly hacking pronunciation and how to speak, people assume that you spent a lot longer on the language than you have. At that point, I couldn't write at all and, was barely able to read in Portuguese, but I did speak reasonably well. And so I think people really think that maybe you've spent years and years studying. Coming back to AJ's question, what can people expect if they sign up for a Mimic Method course? What kind of time investment on a weekly basis, or do you think it would take to really get some results out of this for most of your users?
Yeah, well, so the way we structure it in our courses now is learning pronunciation is a motor skill and it takes a lot of repetition and attention to detail to really master. So the way it works is you have a lesson, we take a line, we break down the line syllable by syllable. You learn the pronunciation of each syllable individually. Then through our process, you construct it all together and start slow motion and build the speed. It looks pretty simple on the outside, but it actually takes, for a single line, a good 30 to 45 minutes of intense mental exertion to really get it. But it's good because it's like hitting the gym. Once you exert your brain and you take a night of rest, you learn it. And what happens at the end of each lesson is you record yourself and submit to us for feedback. Then what we do is we go in and we pinpoint the exact sounds you're mispronouncing and then tell you exactly what you need to do with your mouth to fix it. And then through that iterative process, you slowly start to break through that sound barrier and feel the flow of the language. So if you did it every day, it would be like an hour a day. You know, our current course, you can finish in like 6 weeks that way. What most people obviously are not going to be doing something every day, even if they like to. So the average person would take a little longer, like maybe 2 to 3 months. You know, some people will drop off for like 3 months straight and then come back on all of a sudden when they have a freer schedule or whatever. So, I designed everything because the location independent business was my original goal when doing this thing. I designed it so that it was self-paced for the person and that we only needed to interact and manage the students whenever they sent us something. So within 24 hours, you get your feedback. But in the meantime, you know, you do it on your own, you know?
That's really smart for your business too, not having to do any unnecessary work. And at the same time, you're not pimping your students at all because you're truly letting them work at your pace. It's a win-win. They get to work at their pace. And if they want to work a little bit slower, I mean, you don't have to exert anything in the meantime and, you know, spin your wheels trying to help people that aren't going to be responsive to you. So making the student take the lead, you're doing the minimum amount necessary to help them.
And it lets you focus on the people that are really studying intensely, I would think. You know, if you've got somebody that's working every day, then you can get back to them every day because you're not, you know, trying to get attention from other people who maybe aren't studying.
Exactly. And we have a lot of those people, and I encourage them a lot. It works out from a business point of view because it allows things to scale a little bit more, where you have a lot of students, but you're not like going to class every day and doing face-to-face interaction, which you can only do for like 5 people a day. This one, you can have thousands of people coming in just for one tutor. And then also from an education standpoint, I'm a strong believer that all learning is self-learning. I mean, the teacher's only there to show you the path. It's up to you to walk it, you know? So there's no way I can just install my Portuguese into your brain. Like, you have to do it yourself, you know?
Not yet, Idahosa, not yet.
Not yet. The time will come when the matrix takes over, but in the meantime, there's only Mimic Method.
Just going to have to do hard work.
All right, Idahosa, so the key takeaway for somebody that this, you know, appeals to is if they're willing to give, you know, an honest effort, in a couple months, they can dramatically increase their accent and they can dramatically increase training their ear to hear that native speaker and retain more of what, you know, somebody speaks to them.
I mean, honestly, I get feedback from people that report gains in a week. Like you do a couple of lessons within that week. Because what it does is a lot of this information you get on this course, you've never gotten before. You've never thought about these things. And as soon as you start tuning your ear, as soon as you start training sound specifically, you have huge improvements. I had an email from somebody who was like, oh, I live in a neighborhood full of Dominicans and I never understand what they say. I did your course for like 2 weeks and now I can understand like 70% of what they say, you know? So they already knew a lot of Spanish going in. They knew the words, they knew grammar. But they couldn't understand people when they talk too fast and too quickly. So we kind of tune your ear to the actual natural flow of the language, which allows you to process it the way it's supposed to be processed. You do the whole course, you're going to be flowing like crazy. But even if you just do 2 or 3 lessons, you will notice an improvement. And that's why it's great. I have a 100% refund policy. And I think I've given like 1 refund in the entirety of the course. And that was somebody who was just trying to like game the system anyways. And people do it. They do 1 lesson and like, it just like changes the game, you know? So I'm really confident in the offering. Yeah.
Great to get that feedback. I have one question a friend asked to me and I really wanted to get your take on it. What are your thoughts on somebody trying to learn more than one language at the same time? And is there a difference for someone who's learning their second language or their first foreign language versus someone who, maybe has already studied and has learned a couple of languages already?
So I discovered flow training after learning Spanish, Portuguese, and Chinese. I went through the experiences of forgetting all my Spanish, and when I learned my second language, and then especially when I learned Portuguese. When I started doing specific sound training, it kind of separates these things in their own categories more in your brain. And now as a result, I'm really good at switching between languages. So I travel a lot and I'll meet French people, I'll meet Chinese people, boom, switch back and forth. There's no interference anymore. And I attribute that to the sound training element. So what I found is a lot of people buy multiple courses on my site. And I encourage that because when you learn the sounds of two languages in the same time, it puts it into a kind of context, a more general context of how sound works in general. Communicating, you might have little habits from one language that will spill over to the other one. But if you plan on being multilingual in the future, like more than two languages, then you might as well start now than later. I don't think sequentially is going to be any faster. You're going to have the problem, so you might as well solve the problem now,
Yeah, that definitely makes sense.
Here's a follow-up question to that. So do you think there's a difference between, let's say I don't speak any Portuguese, I don't speak any Spanish, and I say, hey, I want to learn those two Romance languages side by side, which are fairly similar. Or, is there a big difference with me saying, I want to learn Portuguese and I also want to learn something Germanic like German?
Well, here's the thing. My approach to learning a language is very simple, which is I master its flow so I can learn how to mimic, step one. Then I go to the place and I just start talking to a shit ton of people. And then eventually I pick it up. So depending on where I'm going, I'm not really going to have that much opportunity to learn two languages at once because I'm assuming in Berlin, everyone speaks German and I won't get a chance to speak, Japanese while I'm there, But at the same time, the flow training you can do for any language simultaneously. So once again, if you learn Spanish and Portuguese at the same time, it will put it in a context for you where oh, now I understand the sounds of Spanish better because I have it compared to Portuguese. You learn Spanish and a Germanic language at the same time, it'll create a similar effect where you get a broader spectrum of how the mouth works. Honestly, I recommend people to learn multiple flows at the same time. When you learn multiple flows, each individual flow gets stronger. Learning multiple languages, like what things mean and learning phrases and grammar and stuff like that, that is where it can get confusing. Honestly, I don't think it's even that much good use of time. You just go to the place and interact with people anyways. That's how you're going to learn it. No matter how much method you do, no matter how much Duolingo you do, you won't be fluent until you spend significant time immersed in the environment.
Yep. Yeah, that's a great point. I think all the huge language breakthroughs I've had have definitely come from living and just being a part of the local culture someplace that speaks that language.
Which is why you need to sign up for a Broaders Premium so you can get to that place for dirt cheap, the same way Erik got me to Brazil for $5.
Exactly. Lots of huge opportunities, man. So we got to wrap it up pretty quick here. I know you got a lot of other travel coming up, man. Can you give us a real quick rundown of where you're going to be? I think I'm pretty much following you across the globe. I'm going to be in Europe right after you, going to Tokyo after you. What else you got on the
seconds?
Exactly. Hey, I already got friends on the ground. You just set up my network for me. You're just the
I was like a hermit crab. I built the show and you just come move into it. But
I'm going to Berlin for a conference beginning of June. I just found out my brother's wife got the Schengen visa to go to Berlin, so I'm gonna hang out with them. I was considering going to Prague during that month as well to see the community there. And then July 2nd, I fly out of Lisbon to Japan. And then I'll be in Tokyo with our mutual friend and my brother, Andrew. Then be in Tokyo for 2 to 3 months. Then meet up in Bangkok. And then after that, I'll be in Southeast Asia until... after you guys went to Carnival this year, I've decided that enough is enough.
You're going to be there next year?
Brazil.
I'm going back for New Year's and Carnival. I'm trying to ball out. So let's do this.
Cool, man.
Well, that sounds good, Idahosa. I know Erik has a similar streak to me, but we can keep our streak of hanging out not in the U.S. because I saw you last year in Brazil and Thailand. And if you're going to be at DC BKK, I will be there as well. Checking out Saigon after, too. I think that's probably what I'm going to do.
I emailed Erik and I was like, hey, man, I'm going to be in New York for the weekend. I know you're in Detroit. If you want to fly out, it's only a couple of thousand British Airways miles. And I just get 2-word response no, can't meet you in U.S. that was end the conversation. It was like sacred territory.
If you're ever back in, the U.S., what we need to do if we want to have a meetup is we just Airbnb a cool apartment in Toronto or Montreal.
There you go.
not too far.
Problem solved.
Cool, man. Everybody, please check out Idahosa at mimicmethod.com. He is the reason that I'm speaking Portuguese, Spanish, and working on a couple of others. So if you're serious about learning language and you want to be multilingual, you want to really enhance your travel, absolutely check out what this guy's got going on. It is phenomenal language training.
Yeah, we will also link to the Kickstarter in the show notes. Idahosa got off to a good start there. He's about 40% funded now, but he could definitely still use your help to get there.
Yeah,
and why stop at 10K? Give the guy the money he needs to create a kick-ass product.
Cool.
$1 million.
$1 million.
Today's international jam is DJ named Taíra re-edit of Gilberto Gil classic called Toda Menina Baiana. Been approved by Gilberto Gil himself, not the same way that mine has been approved by Duolingo itself.
And
It's a dope track, it's a nice dance track. Yeah, check it out. We'll play it out for the outro.
Thanks for being here, man. Awesome to have you.
All right, man. Take care, buddy.
Peace.
Toda menina baiana tem santo que Deus dá. Toda menina baiana tem encanto que Deus dá. Toda menina baiana tem jeito que Deus dá. Toda menina baiana tem.
Hey, brothers, don't be shy. Hop over to the website and join our email list for exclusive travel hacking content. If you like what we're up to, the best way you can support the show is by leaving us a 5-star review on iTunes. Lastly, we would love to hear from you, so send your show feedback to Erik or AJ at abroaders.com. We will see you next week.
Primeira missa